You are sitting in a kitchen in a quiet suburb, but the person across from you isn't a doctor. They are a butcher with a scalpel, and for $3,000, they have promised you the body you have always wanted. The underground world of black market surgery is not a medical anomaly. It is a booming, lethal industry fueled by vanity, desperation, and total lack of oversight. We like to think that surgery is a clean, sterile, and regulated environment, but in the shadows, the reality is far more gruesome. Consider the case of O'Neill Ron Morris. In the early 2010s in Florida, she wasn't just performing injections, she was injecting victims with a toxic cocktail of fix-a-flat, cement, mineral oil, and superglue. Her patients weren't walking out with perfect curves. They were walking out with open, festering wounds and skin that turned black and necrotic. When the police finally raided her operations, they didn't find anesthesia or heart monitors. They found industrial-grade adhesives and victims who would live with permanent disfigurement for the rest of their lives. This isn't an isolated incident. It is a global shadow economy. In many parts of the world, these procedures are marketed on social media platforms as low-cost aesthetic enhancements. The target audience is almost always the same: people who cannot afford board-certified surgeons or who are seeking procedures that mainstream clinics deem too dangerous to perform. The cost is usually a fraction of the legal market, but the price you pay is often your life. In these underground clinics, the standards of hygiene are non-existent. Surgical suites are often repurposed hotel rooms, basements, or even moving vans. The instruments are rarely autoclaved. Infections are not just possible, they are expected. Staphylococcus, E. coli, and even flesh-eating bacteria are constant companions in these rooms. Because these surgeries are illegal, patients rarely seek help until it is too late. They fear deportation, social stigma, or legal repercussions, so they sit at home as their tissues die and their bloodstreams fill with sepsis. The drugs used are the biggest red flag. Often, the anesthesia is a combination of street-bought narcotics and illicit sedatives. There is no anesthesiologist monitoring your vitals. When your heart rate plummets or your airway constricts, there is no emergency crash cart. There is just a person in scrubs who has never gone to medical school, frantically trying to stop the bleeding while you slip into a coma. Look at the statistics. According to a study by the International Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery, thousands of complications are reported every year from unauthorized providers. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Most black market surgeries are never reported to authorities. If a patient dies, the surgeon simply cleans the room, tosses the trash, and moves to a different city. They leave behind no records, no insurance, and no trace. The rise of social media has turned this from a local problem into a viral contagion. Influencers promote aesthetic centers that offer group discounts. They hide the horror stories and emphasize the immediate visual change. When you look at an Instagram feed, you don't see the long-term scarring. You don't see the internal organ failure caused by migrating fillers. You only see a curated image. And for a generation obsessed with immediate perfection, that image is enough to ignore every warning sign. The materials themselves are the true horror story. Legitimate surgeons use medical-grade, FDA-approved silicone or saline. Black market operators use industrial silicone intended for construction work. This silicone does not stay in place. It migrates through the body, wrapping itself around nerves and muscles, creating granulomas, hard, painful lumps that are often impossible to remove without radical surgery. Sometimes the body rejects these materials so violently that it begins to digest itself. Consider the 2017 case in the United Kingdom, where an investigation uncovered a network of beauty therapists performing invasive procedures in the back of hair salons. They were using counterfeit Botox, often contaminated with botulinum toxin that hadn't been stored at the correct temperatures. Some of the victims suffered from drooping eyelids, muscle paralysis, and respiratory failure. These people weren't going to a hospital. They were going to a strip mall for a lethal injection. Why does this industry persist? It thrives on the intersection of body dysmorphia and socioeconomic inequality. When you are told your worth is defined by your physical appearance, you will do whatever it takes to achieve that look. When legal procedures are locked behind paywalls of $10 or $20,000, the black market provides a shortcut. It is a predatory relationship. The surgeon knows you are desperate. They know you are embarrassed. They use that vulnerability to bypass your logic. The victims are not just the gullible. They are teachers, nurses, and students. They are people who have been fed the idea that a certain aesthetic is the key to happiness, and they have been told that a shortcut is the only way to get there. The surgeon sells them a dream, but they deliver a nightmare. If you ever find yourself looking for a medical professional, the warning signs are always the same. If the price is too good to be true, it isn't just cheap, it's deadly. If the facility doesn't allow you to see their certifications, it's because they don't have them. If they demand cash up front and forbid any follow-up visits, you aren't a patient, you are a target. These practitioners are not healers. They are predators who have weaponized the human desire for self-improvement. They operate in the gray areas of the law, hiding behind the fact that their victims are too ashamed to speak out. They rely on the silence that follows a botched procedure to keep their business running. But silence is their greatest weapon. Every time a victim speaks up, the facade cracks. The reality of the underground surgery market is a cold, clinical reminder of what happens when we prioritize the reflection in the mirror over the machine that keeps us alive. We live in a world where we can order almost anything to our doorstep. We have become comfortable with shortcuts. But your body is not a product. You cannot replace it. You cannot return it for a refund. And when a blade touches your skin in a room with no windows and no name, you are gambling with the only thing you truly own. Is the cost of beauty worth the risk of losing your humanity to a basement butcher? The next time you see a filter-perfect life online, remember the rooms that never make it to the feed. Remember the silence, the cement, and the scars. Beauty is a choice, but survival should never be a lottery. As the world pushes for faster, cheaper, and more extreme physical alterations, we must ask ourselves who is actually in control. Is it us, or is it the dark reality we have allowed to grow in the shadows of our own desire?